Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, so let's talk dairy. For generations, it's been presented as this, quintessential health staple.
Right, full of essential nutrients, vitamins, minerals,
Yeah.
the whole package.
Exactly. And historically, that perception, it held a lot of truth. In its ideal form, dairy was a nutritional powerhouse.
I no doubt about it.
But today, we're zoning in on a really specific goal for you listening, and that's longevity. We're not just asking if dairy is healthy, generally. We're using your sources here to dive deep into the nutritional analysis, trying to uncover maybe the less obvious impacts of dairy when the main goal is boosting your lifespan. We've got some fascinating material.
Precisely. Historically, like you said, dairy, especially maybe from free-grazing animals, it offered huge nutritional value, foundational stuff.
Right.
But when our focus shifts, specifically to long-term health, anti-aging science, well, we need to look at those benefits through a slightly different lens.
Makes sense.
Our sources suggest that dairy, particularly cow's milk, as most of us drink it today, it has several aspects that might actually work against longevity rather than for it.
Okay, and here's where it starts to get really interesting, based on what you sent over. Your sources jump right into lactose.
Yeah, lactose, that disaccharide, the sugar in milk.
And most of us just think, okay, lactose intolerance, bloating, maybe an upset stomach, that kind of thing.
Right, the digestive side.
But these sources point to something maybe more nuanced, a potentially wider impact on longevity that goes way beyond just a tummy ache.
Absolutely. The core issue highlighted is our ability to digest lactose. It relies on the lactase enzyme.
The enzyme, yeah.
And our production of that enzyme often drops off, sometimes significantly, after we're about 5 years old.
After 5, wow.
Yeah. And what's really key here is you don't necessarily need to have obvious symptoms, diarrhea, cramps, to not be digesting it properly.
So it could be happening sort of silently?
It could just be inefficient digestion, yeah. And there's a big genetic piece, too. Like, the sources mentioned 95% of the Han Chinese population struggles with lactose as adults.
95%. That's huge. So it's not just a Western thing at all.
Not at all. It seems to be a widespread biological shift as we age.
That really makes you think, if our bodies are naturally dialing down this ability and we can just pop a pill, a supplement to force digestion, what's the biological cost of doing that long term, beyond just feeling okay digestively?
That's a critical question the sources explore. They look at what happens when lactose does get broken down. It splits into two simple sugars. Glucose.
Which the body uses, fine.
Right, uses readily for energy, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And the other one is galactose.
So lactose, okay.
And here's the kicker. According to these sources, in adults, galactose isn't really utilized efficiently by the body. It sort of hangs around.
It causes problems.
You can become a metabolic bystander that might trigger issues. The sources point to evidence, like a 2021 mouse study. It found that a diet high in galactose in adult mice actually stimulated oxidative stress.
Damage from free radicals.
Exactly. And chronic inflammation. And this seemed to lead to poorer performance, cognitive issues, more brain inflammation, things like that.
Wow, okay. So not just a digestive annoyance, but actual potential cellular damage?
Yeah.
That's quite a different perspective.
It is.
And speaking of things that might seem minor, your sources also connect us to something many people notice: getting more mucus after consuming dairy.
The mucus connection.
They link this to generating crosslinks in the body. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, think of crosslinks like random bits of glue gumming up machinery. They make proteins and DNA stick together in ways they shouldn't, hindering their function. It adds to wear and tear.
So accelerating aging, basically.
That's the idea. It contributes to faster aging. Now, the sources are careful. They say it's not very grave or problematic acutely.
Right, not like an immediate danger.
No, it's more like generating a little more damage than you and I can compensate for over the long haul. It's that slow cumulative effect, the drip, drip, drip.
Okay, that makes sense. It's the accumulation over decades.
Exactly. A subtle, consistent stress.
All right, so we've got lactose and galactose causing these hidden issues, potentially accelerating aging. But that's not all. Let's pivot to insulin.
Yes, insulin.
We often connect insulin with blood sugar, diabetes, weight management. But what did the sources say about dairy's link to insulin and longevity specifically?
This is another really critical piece for the longevity puzzle. What the sources explain is that even if you're not overweight, even if you don't have blood sugar problems, high dairy consumption seems to make us progressively less sensitive to insulin over time. It leads towards insulin resistance.
Even without other risk factors?
That's what's suggested. It's a gradual decline. And they cite a pretty striking study on 8-year-old kids.
8-year-olds, okay, they should be super insulin sensitive.
Exactly. Much more than adults. Yet in this study, giving them just 53 grams of milk protein, compared to the same protein amount from meat, it doubled their fasting insulin levels.
Doubled it in kids.
Doubled it.
Wow. So if it does that in children, who are generally pretty resilient metabolically, what's the implication for adults whose insulin sensitivity is often declining with age anyway?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? You have to wonder about the cumulative effect over years and decades in adults.
So connecting the dots. Sustain higher insulin, lower sensitivity. How does that tie into longevity, according to these sources?
Well, the sources present this state. Higher insulin, reduced sensitivity is a factor that ultimately leads to less longevity, seems to negatively impact various aging pathways, making the body less efficient at repair and maintenance, that sort of thing.
Got it. So it's another systemic effect beyond just digestion.
Yep.
Okay, but then there's another angle, which sounds almost counterintuitive at first, growth factors.
Right. MTOR and IGF-1.
Yeah, MTOR and insulin-like growth factor 1, these sound good, right? Growth promoting, useful. Where's the problem for longevity?
That's a great point, and it really highlights a key theme from the sources. Context matters. Whether something is good or bad often depends entirely on your objective.
Okay.
So MTOR and IGF-1 are beneficial. They're crucial during growth phases, childhood, adolescence. And they're great for building muscle mass. That's whey protein, which is dairy-derived, is so popular for hypertrophy, for muscle building.
Right. Bodybuilders love whey.
Exactly. But the issue arises when we look at continuous stimulation of these pathways in adults who aren't focused on, say, maximum muscle gain.
Why is constant growth signaling bad for longevity?
The sources explain it like this. Cells constantly pushed to grow and divide become less effective at maintaining themselves. They shift resources away from repair and cleanup. It's basically the opposite of autophagy.
Autophagy being the cellular spring cleaning process.
Precisely. That process of clearing out damaged parts and recycling components, which is super important for cellular health and longevity. Constant growth signals suppress that.
Okay, so it's like running a factory flat out, making new stuff constantly, but never stopping for maintenance or to clear out the junk?
That's a perfect analogy. And the consequences. More accumulation of DNA damage, faster cellular aging, and an increase in these so-called zombie cells or senescent cells.
Ah, senescent cells, the ones that hang around causing inflammation.
Exactly. They don't function properly, but they don't die,
Yeah.
and they spew out inflammatory signals. The sources also mention studies looking at death risk relative to dairy intake, finding links between higher milk consumption and markers like more DNA damage and inflammation. But, and this is important,
Okay.
the sources are also quick to point out that there are, quote, many poorly designed studies or studies with major limitations out there.
Right. The quality of the research varies a lot.
Hugely.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't take every single study finding as gospel. They can be contradictory. It really emphasizes the need for critical thinking when you look at nutritional science.
That's a really crucial point. It's never quite black and white, is it?
Rarely.
So pulling all these threads together, the lactose-C-galactose issue, the insulin sensitivity impact, the mTORVIC F1 simulation, what are the practical takeaways? If your main goal is longevity, what should you do based on these sources?
Okay, actionable steps. First, the most direct recommendation seems to be significantly cut back on cow's milk. It tackles the lactose and potentially the galactose issue head on.
Just straight up cow's milk.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily about ditching all dairy. The sources differentiate.
How so?
Well, they point out that certain products, like many cheeses and yogurts, are different. The fermentation process involves microorganisms.
Good bacteria.
Exactly. They consume the lactose, the carbohydrate. So the end product has minimal or even no lactose.
Oh.
This also means they generally have a lower glycemic index, they don't spike your blood sugar as much, and less insulin stimulation compared to plain milk. So if you enjoy dairy, those are often better choices from this perspective.
Cheeses and yogurts. Got it. Any other distinctions?
Yes, a second recommendation builds on that. If you do choose cheeses and yogurts, consider options made from goat, sheep, or buffalo milk.
Why those specifically?
The sources state they contain a different type of casein protein. Casein is the main protein in milk. The type in most commercial cow's milk, A1 casein, is suggested to be more inflammatory for some people than the A2 casein, more common in goat, sheep, and some heritage cow breeds.
Interesting. So goat or sheep cheese might be less inflammatory?
Potentially, yes, according to these sources. It's another layer of being selective.
Okay, those are helpful regarding which dairy. But what about the nutrients in dairy? If you cut back, especially on milk, aren't you missing out on calcium, protein?
That's a fair point and leads to the third recommendation. Be proactive about finding other sources for those key micronutrients.
So make a conscious effort.
Definitely. If you reduce dairy, you need to ensure you're getting enough calcium, protein, vitamin D, etc. from elsewhere. Leafy greens, nuts, seeds, fortified plant milks, fish, legumes. It requires planning a well-rounded diet.
Right, you can't just cut something out without thinking about replacements.
Exactly. And this ties into a bigger point the sources make about food quality in general.
Which is?
That a huge limitation in so many nutrition studies is treating all foods in a category as identical, like meat is meat or dairy is dairy.
But they're not, are they?
Not even close. The sources use the example of pasture-fed versus feedlot meat.
Big difference there.
Huge. Pasture-fed tends to have more omega-3s, less saturated fat, lower cardiovascular risk associated with it. You can likely eat more of it with fewer downsides. The same principle absolutely applies to dairy. The source matters immensely.
Can you give an example for dairy?
Yeah, there's this really fascinating anecdote in the sources about a nomadic Mongolian tribe. Their traditional diet includes things like horse meat, but also unpasteurized milk from camels or cows that are completely free grazing on the steppes.
Wow. Very different from a carton in the supermarket.
Totally different. Nutritionally distinct. The sources mention it has a unique effect on gut flora. Someone new to it might need a few days to adapt and contributes to their population having excellent dental health. Now, it's not presented as the ideal longevity diet necessarily,
Right.
but it powerfully illustrates how the source and processing or lack thereof dramatically changes the food's impact. Industrial milk is just not the same thing.
That really drives home the context point. It's not just dairy, it's which dairy, from where, how it was produced.
Precisely.
So bringing it all together for our listener focused on longevity, the main thrust from these sources seems to be reducing overall dairy, especially cow's milk, is likely beneficial.
Yes, that appears to be the primary conclusion.
But it comes with a big if you make sure you're getting those essential nutrients like calcium and protein from other high-quality sources.
Exactly. It's about making informed, intentional substitutions, not just creating a nutritional gap.
Okay. We've definitely covered a lot today. We went from, lactose maybe not being just a digestive issue, but having deeper cellular effects.
The galactose and crosslinks.
To dairy's surprising role in insulin sensitivity over time, even in healthy people.
The gradual resistance.
And then this whole paradox with growth factors like mTOR and IGF-1 being great for building muscle, but maybe not ideal for longevity if constantly stimulated.
It's complex, isn't it?
It really is. A lot to think about.
I think the core takeaway, what's really fascinating here, is understanding that food isn't just good or bad in a simple sense.
Right.
Its impact is so highly contextual. It depends on the processing, the animal's diet, its living conditions, and crucially, what our individual biological goals are. Especially for something long-term like longevity. It demands a much more nuanced approach than just following old rules.
Yeah, absolutely. Black and white thinking doesn't really work here. Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. Given how incredibly different dairy can be. I mean, picture that carton of industrial milk versus the fresh, unpasteurized milk from a free-roaming yak or camel on the Mongolian steppes.
But it's apart.
How much do you really know about the origins and the processing of the foods you eat regularly? And what kinds of subtle long-term effects might those differences be having on your health, on your potential lifespan?
That's a powerful question. Thinking about the source.
Definitely something to reflect on. Perhaps explore some of those alternative nutrient sources or the different types of dairy options, like the goat or sheep cheeses that we talked about today. See how you feel.
Good advice. Experimentation and awareness.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.